That front door. Should you need to go to the bathroom, jet out, do anything like that, please exit through the that back door over there, not this one because of disruptions. This is being filmed. It's a conversation. So we had the panels. They were super insightful, really dynamic panelists. This setting is going to be even more casual. I would love it for the audience to participate as much as possible throughout the conversation. So I'm not going to save the questions till the end. I want more involvement with the audience for this type of situation. And of course, we know the theme is about branding. So keep it relevant, no rants. I know sometimes with classmates, because I was an alumni here as well, you get a monologue before actually getting the question. We're going to avoid that. And I'll repeat the question for our live streaming purposes so that everybody back at home can also watch. So I'd like to thank all of you first for coming here, and I have to get straight to our wonderful panelists that I'm very excited to have this conversation because they have a lot of expertise within the branding world, media, marketing, publicity. Pumela, who this beautiful, she told me for her name to say it the Japanese way in terms of how to pronounce because you know there's a lot of pronunciations and I don't want to screw up because it's respectful to just say it. So Pumela Salela, like that. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, it's like a singing song. You were the country head for or are the country head for the UK under Brand South Africa. So your goal is to pretty much promote the country, and based in London. And do you travel around the world as well to do that, or just most primarily in London?
My jurisdiction is the UK.
Okay, so you have that, and you sit on. You saw the bio. It's long. There's tons of boards.
It was supposed to have been shortened.
No, it's an impressive group of people here today. And then we have Arvi Nahar, who's here. You are the group editor of African Leader magazine, which we're going to talk about that very in depth. And then you're also a consultant in oil and gas. And I forgot to mention, Pumela is running a marathon, half marathon tomorrow. Remember the little tidbits? If you were there for the first session, we like to talk about some of the things, you know, make them more relatable. So props to you. You have that tomorrow morning. You're excited for that. And then I guess your little story, your background story is that at 28, you decided, hey, I'm just going to get up. I'm going to leave London and go to Ghana. And I'm just going to find $1 million and get into mining. And you described it really eloquently in the cafeteria. What happened?
Just, yeah, saw an opportunity and I went for it. I left the city of London and we went for it.
Yeah. And did it succeed? Or?
Well, can I say what I really said?
Yeah, do it. This is casual.
I think it succeeded, but really it went tits up between me and you. But, you know, it was great experience. It was great experience, which got me here today. So, you know, I don't want to, yeah.
I really like the description. It was very candid. And so that's the kind of vibe that we're going to go for. So we're actually going to start first with just describing branding. I think it's incredibly difficult when you have so many countries in one continent. You can't just make a narrative that is, you know, focused in on just one classic sentence. Yeah. So if, in your opinion, your experience, considering you have to brand one country and you're all the boards you sit on, how would you describe this narrative? And is it possible? Is it one size fits all?
I think the African narrative is really about looking at Africa through the eyes of Africans. It's about looking at Africa within the context of what Africa is authentically. And if we're talking about branding Africa, it's about looking at our history, our values, our stories, our culture, our vision, and how they combine to create a common sense of identity. And so that then becomes the identity with which we can position the continent. And it's really, I mean, looking at it from this point of view that where others see poverty, we see opportunity. That to me is the African narrative and the branding thereof.
In your capacity though, you work at a magazine. So if we're talking about the positives, are you able to showcase those positives in the magazine? Is it that simple, or what hurdles do you have?
I think we, as any publication does, we have our own set of hurdles, but I think our job is, you see, Western media has a different way of portraying Africa.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So if everyone uses Google here, if you Google Africa, they will tell you about political upheaval, chaos here, and fantastic safaris and things like that. Our job is to actually talk about the operational stuff that's going on in country and highlighting, you know, the best bits, the strengths of the region. You know, what are the new entrepreneurs? What are the regional issues? But actually, not just an issue, what's the solution as well? So as a publication house, it's paramount that we speak to people on the ground and understand, okay, how can we tell their story, you know, to the wider world? You know, we're registered here in London. You know, we have an office in Lagos, in Houston, and in London. So really, we have a global reach, and it's our job to tell the story of what's really going on in country, and not be reliant upon, you know, what you can Google and all the rest of it. And Google has a great way. And don't forget, you know, we're in the social media age. It's recycled information. I can't warrant what I see all the time. And that's the reason why our publication has been so successful, because we're an indigenous publication house.
Right.
And so we tell the real story, the operational story of what's going on.
Do you find, given your experience, the same difficulties where you are trying to promote something, you're trying to promote a country, a continent, and yet you have people that aren't as experienced, have never maybe been to South Africa, that hear about the horror stories or hear about the negativity, corruption, or water problems. How do you mitigate that and change their opinion?
For me, I would encourage people to travel, and that's what I've done in Africa. I have been to about 34 African countries because I wanted to understand the continent. I wanted to walk the talk and walk the walk itself, because I believe, I sit here and I'm a Pan-Africanist. I believe in Africa as a continent. But through my having traveled through the continent, I was able to learn the unique identity of each country within Africa. So I think if you don't travel, then you'll be ignorant.
But
because
I think, just to interrupt, I think that's it's a difficult task and a difficult ask for a lot of people that can't take the time off, can't afford to travel across the continent. So then what should they be doing to better understand what each country can offer?
They should look at the country from the perspective of the inhabitants of the country, not coming with preconceptions, understanding it from the people who are owning the narrative, actually. Because most of the time, I don't know, you probably have been in the US where you say that, where there's sometimes you say that you're from Morocco, and then someone will be like, oh, you mean Zimbabwe, because there's no understanding of the full picture of the whole continent. So it's about just being conscious. Okay, even if you're not traveling the continent, it's about being conscious and reading and understanding it from the perspective and the context and the culture. The culture is very important, the culture of the Africans themselves, because if you're looking at the African continent from your own preconceived cultural point of view, you will see it maybe as a failure, or you will be biased towards the negative.
To that point, and again, this is an open dialogue, so just raise your hand if you want to interject. Okay, for sure, you go ahead.
So I've got a question for each, and thank you very much for taking time out. So I'm from a finance background, and there was a time where I saw the importance of the narrative. So I went for an interview with Charles, which is centered across the narrative space. Suffice to say, I didn't get the job, but he was talking to me about some of the challenges he faced in expressing the importance of narrative to the Africans themselves.
Yes.
So he looked at how the companies, and the challenge he faced was trying to convince them that it's necessary to adopt the right narrative to further enhance the product that they're trying to sell to their audience. So my question to you, I guess, is what are some of the challenges you face from the Africans themselves that you are trying to help? And then my second question.
Wait, let's hold the second question before you get to it. It's really great that you asked that, because that was literally going to be my next question, which I think is the big thing. Yes. We talk about the Western perspective, European, everybody outside of Africa, but we don't talk enough about how Africans perceive various countries within the continent and how they can help fuel the economy too. It's not just reliance on that. So to repeat the question, just for our listeners at home, is just the challenges internally within the country and how to change that point of view amongst Africans first. What have you felt, or how have you experienced that?
I think sometimes as Africans, we are our own worst critics. As a result, we don't realize that if, for example, you are an African in the diaspora, you may be the only person, the only African that someone who's not from Africa will ever meet. So if you're going there being critical of everything, that's the narrative that others will have of Africa. And I think sometimes we're not patient enough. We want things to be done now and done like yesterday. Whereas some things, as our great president Nelson Mandela said, that some things are actually a process and not an event.
And Arvi, for you to add to that, given your experience, we were talking about this offline, in Ghana, when you were trying to raise money to put your mining project into work, what obstacles did you face in the country and continent, as opposed to being in London trying to raise funding?
I think the challenges, I suppose, will be for any entrepreneur. It's trying to satisfy the prerequisites, the commercial contractual prerequisites. When you go to a finance house, when you go to a banking institute, they want to know how many years operation, can you give us 3-year audits? And from my perspective, I remember going to the banker saying to him, well, I just started operation 9 months ago. What do you want me to show you? You know? So it was very practical thing. What I did is I took videos. I took him, you know, very granules of gold that we had washed to actually show him, and it blew his mind. You know, I didn't get the financing, but he was very shocked to see it. But again, you have to sometimes bring it down to the very practical level, because sometimes the challenges are you can't meet the tick box. You know, when you are raising finance for a lot of these huge institutions, which sometimes can hinder, you know, I guess sometimes you lose confidence as well, you know, as an entrepreneur in the region. But there are lots of challenges. But I don't think that's a reason to give up. I think, you know, now there's more than ever small equity firms coming up in the region that can provide assistance. You know, this was 7 years ago when I was 6-7 years ago. And just since then, there's 92 small firms.
So just to clarify for the audience, when you were seeking funding and trying to explain this is a project that I know can reap benefits, you got most of your funding internally within Africa or from London banks or London guys?
It was from London guys.
Okay.
Yeah, there was 4 of us that raised the money ourselves.
Okay.
Through people that we know and people that believed in us, and you know, it was good. You know, none of the institutes that we thought would come forward came forward, which was really quite sad.
Yeah.
But that's the truth. That's a very operational truth about what it's like raising financing for small projects.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating because it's not only difficult outside and finding it from Westerners, but the fact that the difficulties, that the hurdles that you both face and others to seek funding internally. Like, you want to be able to support, but yet we're not ticking off those boxes. And I know you had a second question, so if you could, feel free to ask it now.
So it was just interesting because I'm making a move to Ghana next month.
Oh, look at the...
I just wanted to know, what are some of the challenges? I guess I'm not a stranger to Ghana.
Okay.
I haven't gone to secondary school there. But
Okay, good.
what are some of the initial challenges you faced? What would you have done differently? And do you feel that those challenges are something that an African from any country in Africa going to Ghana would face too?
I think so.
Wait, let me just repeat the question again. So what challenges did you face in Ghana? What were the differences? And whatever you learned in that country, can it be applicable to surrounding countries for everyone here so they can learn from your mistakes?
I think it's important to understand that we talk about a huge continent as Africa, so one size will not fit all. That's the first point for discussion. So please don't think what operates in Ghana is going to work in Nigeria or Benin or Zimbabwe. It doesn't work like that, okay? You have to take it as a niche. It is what it is. And secondly, to reiterate, the challenge for me was convincing, you know, we went, 4 of us from London when we were went to Ghana, into Accra. And I remember going to register the company at PMMC, Precious Mineral Mining Committee. And I remember them looking at us and putting us at the back of the queue. Yeah, I just remember little things like that. It didn't mean anything to me because I can understand they're probably thinking, you know, what are you doing and what's your business? And what I ended up understanding from all this experience is that it's little things about country admin, okay, registering the company, understanding that you've got the right licenses, the permits for licensing, the Amansi district, if you are in the Boissy region, for example, mining, the appropriate licenses, and understanding your business model. You know, we're just a novice, you know, and I remember operating opposite a huge Chinese corporation, a huge Indian corporation, and then we got a huge Ghanaian, and they would walk past us, these huge corporations, and laugh at us. And we were laughing at ourselves because here we were, you know, just as amateurs really, but it was the greatest experience of my life because what I saw and what I experienced, you know, apart from showing you guys pictures and videos, I could never quite explain it to people. I couldn't even explain it to my friends back in London or my family. You know, trying to explain to them, oh, these kids are in the bush, you know, this is what they do, and you know, and it's something that I think the story has to be told because it's fascinating. You know, we all wear jewellery, we all have gold, we all have diamonds. Okay, where does it come from? Tell the story. Tell us how we got there, you know. And so I think to answer your question as best as I can, there's always going to be challenges, but I think getting the fundamentals right of administration will help any business. You know, correct registration, correct partnership in country. You must promote in-country partnership. You know, make sure you've got the right people there to guide you as well. So I hope that answers your question to the best of. Yeah.
And you wanted to add to that?
Oh, well, yeah, what I wanted to add to is that, you know, these reports that are looking at cost of doing business in countries assist countries in terms of identifying where are the loopholes in terms of people who are trying to establish businesses. And I'll speak of South Africa because that's where I come from. South Africa has established a one-stop shop that answers to what you are saying, where instead of having to go to different places to do the processes of registering a company, you just go to one place and you get all the departments that you need, even the revenue, the company registration under one roof. And I think that it's a model that we should encourage across the continent as we're talking regional integration, as we're talking trade agreements, so that in every country within the continent, you don't have to run around to set up.
Okay. Again, oh, sure, you, sir.
Well, I think when she started speaking, she mentioned issues to do with history, values, and what you call it, culture.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, because of our diversity, right?
Yeah.
What is in your view, what is the most best way to describe an African?
That's such a bold, big question. What's the best way to describe an African? So,
yeah, in her view, I think she has struggled.
Yeah, both have traveled quite a bit, and so.
I'm trying to think.
But then you're trying to ask, can you create one size fits all description of, for an African, for the rest of the world to understand? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, kind of.
I can say one word. It's resilient. Resilience as individuals and resilience as countries. Because many Africans as individuals, and I'm sure I'm speaking for some of you who are here, have risen against all odds to be where you are. And when I speak about resilience of countries within the African continent, I'm speaking about the fact that countries have gone through highs and lows, challenges, bad patches, but they are still rising.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, sir, go ahead.
Can I just ask, about selling brand Africa, say in terms of tourism, like who's the customer? Because if you look at Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, which is Africa, it's for Western European tourists. You've got Barbados. I went to Barbados recently. Barbados, Bridgetown. I've never been so organized. But if you go to northern Barbados, it's like Tanzania, my mum's town. They know who their customer is. Barbados know clearly who they're going for. Sharm el-Sheikh know who they're going for. The UAE, they've rebranded themselves, and they're very clear on this is the customer, this is the imagery which to project. And I just wonder from your experiences, like who is that customer Africa is going for? Because I can recognize when I go to Tanzania, everyone talks about beaches and safari. I've never been on the beach or been to safari, but my mum's town. I wonder for your experience, who's this customer we're going for?
Okay. Who is the customer that you are trying to... I'm just repeating the question. I have to repeat it every time because you're not mic'd, so I know it's a nuisance. Sorry, folks. Who is the customer when we were talking about tourism? Go ahead, sorry.
Thanks, Katrin. First of all, I think one thing most of the countries that are within, the sea have in common is sun, sea, and sand. So from a tourism point of view, to me, there's no point in differentiating the countries from a sun, sea, and sand point of view. So what we do as a country in South Africa is to position it from an experience point of view. So if you're adventurous, there's something for you. If you just want to be laid back and enjoy the vineyards and the wine, there's something for you. Because the consumer, the current tourism consumer is becoming very discreet and very specific in terms of what it is that they want to get. And tourism is actually related to leisure. So you have to make sure that you tailor-make what you package as a country to the type of consumer. So we will not say that we are only targeting people from Asia to come to South Africa. We will say we are targeting an X type of person that wants a Y type of experience.
So it's a very narrow way of doing that.
Yes.
Which
is like target marketing,
exactly,
but specific to individual personalities.
Yeah, like characteristics as opposed to nationality and where they're from. I actually forgot to, so my name is Christina Parts-Nevelis, and I work for Fox Business as a financial presenter. I cover the economy, markets, and unfortunately, I'm not here to cover this event, and we rarely, if ever, even talk about countries in Africa, companies in there, unless it's a major story about, a water shortage or, just...
Which we overcame.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But the point I'm trying to make with that is that it's so unfortunate. I work for a media organization that caters to an American audience. So that is their argument, that those stories are not relevant to the financial viewers back in the US watching. So how, and that's just with my network, but it's a very similar story. I watch the competition all the time, and they're not talking about it unless you come to London, and then you're getting like CNN Africa, or you're getting the catered media outlets. Arvi, this will be for you. How how do you get that to change? Is it just all about, okay, well, we got to get American companies working with African companies so that finally that dialogue can start happening on an international scale? Like, it must be so difficult and frustrating from your point of view working in media to have to get this message out and struggle internationally.
Well, I think we've got to look at it, again, at a practical level, okay? When it comes to tourism, the continent, the African continent is very different. Let's talk about business from a business perspective. We are as detailed, when we put together any editorial, any magazine, it's as detailed as we want it to go, okay? All our magazines and our forums are attended by entrepreneurs, operational guys on the ground. I need to know what's going on. I'm well engaged with each entrepreneur from each African country, what they're doing, what's going on in solar panel, what's going on here. You know, I keep it very regional and I keep it specific. I'm not interested in going to the US market or the London market and say, come on, would you like to join us? We're an independent, we're doing very well. Yes. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that when you're self-funded, you're passionate about delivering the African story. I'm not waiting for an international sponsor to come up to me to tell me, you can publish this because it's fit for purpose for this. I'm not interested. You know, I've seen some great things in the region, and our job is, no matter how we do it, no matter where I have to go to travel to go get 10 minutes with that entrepreneur or go and speak to that CEO or that finance director, I'm here to tell the story operationally, what's going on. Yes, there are challenges, of course there are, but again, our publication is there to let the viewers also, you know, voice their opinion. What do they want to see more of? You know, do you want to see local content development? Do you want to see sustainable development? Do you want to know what's going on in the political scene? You know, what is it what drives you? What's going to make you pick up the magazine? And as I said before, yes, there are challenges, you know, but again, we have business forums every 3 months. You know, we've had a number of, our magazine, we've set up business forums, we've had a number of presidents, you know, for example, next week we are going to the Sustainable Development at the UN. So a number of presidents have really endorsed our publication and they're very happy with our layout as well, because the feedback they've got. Because we're telling a real, as I always say, operational story. That means live, what's going on right now. Not recycled information that you can find on Google. Very different.
Okay, another way of looking at it, and since you are based in the US and how you can advise those who are looking at investing in Africa. Yeah. Yes, it's about, you know, this whole matchmaking process. Because I would take it that if a person is an investor, they're an investor in a sector of the economy, and therefore the kind of investments that they would look for are related to that sector of the economy. For example, let's say when people outside Africa say, you know, in Africa there's no infrastructure, we can't get around, come with your investment and create the logistics and the infrastructure. It will then make business sense for you because it will be an opportunity. Hence, I'm saying even in our poverty, there is opportunity. And if you're looking at Africa is a dark continent in the literal sense. If there's no electricity or energy, if you are an investor in energy, come to the African continent, bring your renewable energy, you know, technology or forms so that the continent can have energy. So there is an opportunity in every challenge that we have within the African continent. And there can be returns on investment in that regard.
Do you think, though, that perception from outsiders and foreign firms is incorrect? And we discussed this in the previous panel very briefly. The power outages, the infrastructure gap in Africa. And then so you have this continental free trade agreement that we're trying to put forward, needs further ratification. How do you change that narrative for those foreign companies, you know, that are seeing this from the outside and getting their money to come and fulfill those needs, infrastructure and energy? I know you're saying just come, but to even get to that point, you have to think that there is opportunity, and many of them think, no, it's too expensive for me to even go there to get involved. It's too difficult to do business in Africa because I'm not from there. It's a different way. And I'll get to your question in a second.
Sure, just to...
Maybe it's an answer.
Yeah,
and please do. It could be, it could be, again, a dialogue. Like many who are students here, you know, conversation, you guys are sharing your insights too from where your country is. A very open format. Yeah. So both, I know you...
Go on, you can answer.
No, you were saying something.
I lost my chain of thought now.
Oh,
go ahead, you go ahead.
I brought up the free trade agreement and the perception, again,
sure.
when it comes to the finances and coming into the continent. Yeah.
I think, you know, let's not forget, we are living in a social media age. The perception, again, is whatever you read and whatever you choose to see on the internet, okay? So we are responsible for what we read, and also, you know, Wikipedia, for example. It's a forum. Everybody can populate whatever information they want, okay? But you read and you take from that what you wish. It's like the subcontinent, okay? You know, the opportunities and the business platforms are there. You have to be willing and wanting to go and seek for opportunities, you know? And if the institutional investors and the big banks in the US or London can't see that, I mean, I don't really understand what more we can do as media publications to really get it out there. That look, you know, lots of opportunities. You must come and see what is there.
And I think we can say that, and I'm sure many countries would agree with me, that within each country there is an entry point. It could be an investment promotion agency, it could be an independent agency, it could be a ministry of trade, but for every country there is always an entry point. And most of the countries also have representations in other countries like United States of America through the embassies, which have trade and investment attaches within them, who can be the first point of contact that anyone sitting in their location can go to, and then they would link them to the countries themselves. So my point is there's always a point of entry to each country.
Sir?
I was really interested in what I'm hearing in terms of the sort of the content and the sort of print side of the media, which in Africa I think is excellent. I think the distribution and the way, other than say any other retail function, I think it's almost been mastered. One of the biggest challenges that I've seen over the years is the fact that basically TV costs money, and getting that content, which is I think is of an excellent standard on the print side, being fed into the actual TV, because you know, cheap TV is normally not very good. And broadcast journalism actually costs money. It's normally what brings down any TV channel, like trying to do 24-hour news and 24-hour live sport. At some point they just burn out of money.
Do you think it's only burning out of money, or do you think also the quality is compromised? Because you just mentioned 24-hour news, and you're constantly having to feed the giant, the monster. So
I just think that when 24-hour news kicked into the Western media, which is not without sin, not your organisation as well, which has its issues sometimes in terms of trying to get customer acquisition and viewer rights in the UK. That's my point is that, you know, TV was always set up as a government situation for the people. Like if you look at the way the BBC was set up, there's always a sort of level of broadcast journalism that was always going to give access to stories. They don't do it very well, but the challenge we have in Africa is I think there are some excellent stories all over the place, especially the print side. And if there was a way that they could almost use the technology to sort of disintermediate the business of media and the business of TV, and actually start creating some of these more Netflix-like platforms where and telling some of these narratives straight to people's mobile phones, and buying out a satellite, or whatever you've got to do to make sure that it actually gets to the people. So that it could have a really catalytic impact on people's.
Both of you, do you find, again, because I have to repeat it, do you find that it's happening, the streaming platforms taking the excellent print journalism that has occurred thus far and moving it to a broadcast world? Where do you think broadcast journalism and media, where does it stack up against the rest when we're talking about the BBC, for example, or Netflix and all of their various news shows that they launched now?
I think it's fair to say that we're nearly there. Okay, I've got to say there's a lot of platforms, and especially with our publication, you know, getting involved with streaming and having an app created, so you get as soon as we issue an editorial or some sort, you know, the app gives you a notification of some sort. So we are getting there slowly. We're not getting quite as where the BBC are.
No, but Madam, what I'm trying
Sure.
to say is that like a picture tells 1,000 words, right?
Yes,
so,
it does.
I think the editorial stories are fantastic.
Right.
I would say so. In any airline I see, they're fantastic. But there's a massive amount of the continent that maybe may not speak French, or may not speak English, or may not speak, you know, there's a lot of disenfranchised people who still need to get aspirations.
Yeah.
You know, and They need to see pictures. They don't need to. They need to hear it in their sort of native tongue, or they need to see pictures.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, how are you getting or distilling those stories into, you know, into those homes, you know? And that's what I'm trying to understand, because those editorials are beautiful.
So then you're asking, how do you make a more localized story, essentially, for the TV world?
How do you reach, how do you distribute it to the people that need to see it? But it's not going to be middle-class people, because they're already there.
Yeah.
It's going to be the...
It's a good point.
It's a good point. It's an expensive point, though,
Yeah.
because you're suggesting let's go more localized so that we can rejuvenate the population, and people want to move away from that. Everything's being streamlined, and you're seeing that known across the globe, across media, just based off of my own experience. It's like you got like 3 major networks now, and I'm from Canada, same thing in Canada, that are dominating the news. Where are the local channels?
Yeah.
And I'll get to, I know that there's a few others, so don't worry, we'll get to you.
I think you're presenting a business opportunity, and I'll match it with some facts which I'm
not selling anything.
No, for yourself or anybody else. No, this is what I'm trying to say. For every challenge, there's an opportunity. That's the angle I'm coming in, my brother. Please understand me. And it could be yourself, it could be anybody here in this audience. And I'm going to read some stats I saw yesterday in The Economist. It said the number of mobile phones and data subscriptions will grow by almost 5% per year over the next 5 years in Africa, more than twice the global average. And nearly 300 million Africans will move online by 2025. And this is according to the GSMA, which is a trade association. So this data is fresh as of yesterday. The point I'm trying to make is that there is an opportunity for independent media producers. And the other opportunity is that media now lies in the hands of all of us, of all the people within Africa. And that, thirdly, there are alternative platforms where people can share content themselves. Content, actually, we must look at content now in nowadays as not being top down, but also as being bottom up, that the people own the content. And now there are alternative platforms for them to share that content. For others, it's YouTube. And it takes a basic phone. Someone this morning said Africans have 3 phones each. So it takes a basic phone for anybody. You know, there's this joke in South Africa of people recording their own videos, and they say, DVD me, you know? People are DVDing themselves, you know? Stop.
So we have a few questions, and supposedly we only have 10 minutes left, which is so unfortunate. Oh, okay. Go ahead. What's the answer? We love answers.
I spent the last decade in the Horn of Africa working in the media industry, but mainly from a humanitarian perspective. I was with the African Union and the UN for a long time. And what I found in terms, and I worked in Stockholm, so my whole point was to disseminate information to as many people as possible in the country that I was working in. And I think what we're forgetting in our European sort of seats sitting here is radio was one of the main sort of information standpoints before we had TV, print, etc., etc. I'm from Somalia, and I worked in Somalia for a long time, and their main source of information was through radio. And I don't know if you know Somalia very well, but 70% of Somalia is like pastoralist communities who don't really have electricity, they don't have, you know, mobile phones. Funnily enough, now they do with their camels, but that's how information got around, radio, and we utilized that. We then also utilized individuals to go into villages and sort of disseminate news. So I don't think we need more technology to go in there. I think what, from my perspective, it was using the technology that's already there and not looking at it from a top, as you said, not looking at dissemination of news from a top-down perspective, which unfortunately is how it is. Nobody would trust your local news agency, but they trust the BBC. So how do we create our own platforms to be creditable, and so that then it can go up rather than the other way?
Arby, do you have a difficulty with that, with your publication, to gain the trust that maybe because you're not associated with a larger, bigger brand?
I don't think we have too much of an issue because we've been around for about 15, 20 years. So we're really entrenched in a lot of the political scene and locally what's going on. But I can see your point, and I appreciate that more on a transactional level, and it's a good point. I guess it's food for thought for me for the next time we have our meeting. Yeah, absolutely. Let's chat after this, actually.
Oh, and there's drinks later, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
I wanted to ask a question that's like, I guess, very, very much branding focused. So the gentleman in the front asked the idea of, who is the target audience for Africa, and obviously answered saying that, we should just come together and make it a kind of a paradise thing. But if we draw back and just look at what is currently happening, for example, Ghana has been very much put out there now. We have, I'm from Ghana myself, we have our whole year of return happening. We were featured in CNN as one of the top places that you must visit this year. So it's a thing that's already happening that people are like, okay, eyes on Ghana, eyes on Ghana. And it was just a full circle festival where a lot of Black Bollywood came all to Ghana, hundreds of them came all to Ghana for the idea that it's been 400 years since the transatlantic slave trade. So they're really, really pushing on the idea of year of return. However, there's obviously local people then just, why does everyone have to come here? You can't really get over that. People are like, what's the point? So if I just give an example, for example, when the Olympics went to Rio, in Rio de Janeiro they said there's too many street kids here. They started killing them because they just wanted to clean the area a bit, make it look a bit prettier. So now if we take, for example, in Ghana, you have the middle class, and people talk about middle class, but specifically, a lot of people travel during holidays time. So in July, in the capital city of Accra, there's this thing that the tribe celebrates called Homawo, and you can't play music out loud in the streets. They will actually beat you at night time if you're playing music because it disturbs their gods. Right now, there's no reason for people to disrupt them because the tourism industry is people are coming, but it's not that big. But if this continues, people seeing obviously Ghana as someone to be, someone to be, someone to be, is it now going to become a thing where because tourism wants to progress so much during summer, we're now saying to these people, this is their tribe, this is what they've been doing for years. We need people to play music at night. We need the clubs to keep going because they're making money. How do you actually work that instead of, okay, we're moving now from taking pictures of children dying in the street to taking pictures of beautiful beaches, but how do you actually look at the people who, the people who aren't the middle class basically, how do we actually take them into account and respect their goals and respect what they're doing? That's my question.
So just to recap from Ghana, branding and how, one, you can include traditions that have been instilled for decades and decades, and then two, to cater to all income demographics and not avoid them. And I know you went into detail, but I'm just paraphrasing really quickly and adding a little bit extra. So I know you.
Okay. In South Africa, when awarding contracts, for example, for whether it's a World Cup or a festival or any sort of, engagement, whether it's cultural or even, so it's what is a requirement is a local economic participation. So there is no sort of foreign company that can come to South Africa with any idea without including the locals. So before that is awarded, they will have to show that this is how the locals will benefit. And I think one of the ways of curbing then the problem in Ghana of people saying, why are they always here, is because perhaps they are not being included, like the local villagers are not being included in this process. And one of the ways of doing that, instead of them being spectators of tourists, is to encourage this whole culture of homestays. And I don't want to call it village tourism because, again, that's like outsiders coming in. So let's call it homestays. Africans, we are known to be hospitable. But now it's about saying that for every tourist that comes, they can stay and experience the authentic African home. And in that process, they are paid by the Ministry of Tourism or any entity within the country. Then they are included as well. They understand why there is value in bringing those outsiders into the country.
Okay, I've been told that I kind of need to wrap it up, but there's literally 4 hands that have been raised. So we're gonna try to answer in 2 seconds. Okay, because you asked, you had your hand up. No, nobody there. No. Did you before?
Oh, I did. But I think
Okay, sir. I know that you really want to get it. If you could say it so quickly, and then we'll get an answer from you.
Well, I'm from Uganda.
Uganda.
I think we are over branding because
As a country.
what we are doing actually is that we are projecting ourselves as a country that is so receptive to foreign investment. We are giving away free land, we are giving tax holidays to investors.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we are allowing 100% foreign profit repatriation. So the question is, how can we brand ourselves without necessarily opening ourselves up to exploitation?
So, Arvi, maybe I can direct that question to you. Just we're talking about Ghana and bringing, improving the branding name, and then Uganda over-branding and not giving up too much of your own property, land rights, all that as collateral, which we've seen. China can even be an example too, and how much control they've had. So. How do you mitigate that, especially with so many different countries where you have clearly opposing issues?
I think, any corporation or any multinational going into an African country has a responsibility of local partnership, but it's also a responsibility of the local government as well to govern these laws. I work in oil and gas, local content quota, sustainable development, and withholding tax are big parts of our contracts. So I think it's about, it works both ways. It's about the corporations taking responsibility as well as the local and national governments as well at that level. But I take your point, and it's a good point. But, there is change. I genuinely see it. I hope that answers it.
I have to unfortunately end this session. I know there's a lot of questions. Boo, timing sucks. Wait, before you all get up, Arvi and Pramila, thank you so much. Can you... Because this is a branding experience and conversation, we all know the hashtag for this event, right? Oxford BFA. Can you share your, what's your Twitter? What do you use mostly for social media?
Instagram and Twitter.
What's
I'm
your
not
name?
On Facebook. My full name's @Pumela Salela.
And Arvi?
One word.
I don't personally use Twitter. The magazine does, but you can get me on LinkedIn and Instagram.
And LinkedIn. Sorry.
Yeah,
LinkedIn and LinkedIn.
All right.
LinkedIn and Instagram, A12RVY.
Yeah, because we need to obviously share this message of the conference, the content that we're talking about. It's great. So thank you guys. And I'm Christina Parts on all of social media.
Followed you on Insta.
Okay, I'll check it. I haven't checked I've been really bad with my phone today. So thank you all. We have a next session that starts at 2. Go get them. Thanks.